Hey everyone, and welcome back to Infidelity Tales Lab. To all our viewers across America, Europe, Asia, and beyond, thank you for being part of our worldwide community. We hope you enjoy today's story, so let's dive in. Chapter 1, The Promise. The anesthesia wore off slowly, like a fog lifting from a winter morning. I blinked against the harsh fluorescent lights of the recovery room, my mouth cotton dry and my thoughts scattered. Dr. Landry's face swam into view, his expression professional but pleased. "Surgery went perfectly, Mr. Delacroix," he said, checking my vitals. "The spinal fusion was successful, but recovery will be challenging. You'll need consistent help for at least 6 weeks." I nodded, wincing at the movement. At 48, I wasn't bouncing back from injuries like I used to. The construction accident 3 months ago had shattered 2 vertebrae, and after exhausting less invasive options, surgery became inevitable. My wife Melanie's face appeared next, her blonde hair perfectly styled even for a hospital visit. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. After 23 years of marriage, I could read every micro-expression on her face. Something was off. "Don't worry, babe," she said, squeezing my hand. "We'll take care of everything." Our children, Preston and Bailey, stood awkwardly behind their mother. Preston, 22 and fresh out of the business school I'd paid for, fidgeted with his phone. Bailey, 19 and home from her sophomore year at UCLA, at least managed a smile that seemed genuine. "Yeah, Dad," Bailey said. "We've got it all arranged." "The whole family will help," Melanie added. "The doctor says you'll need supervision, help with medication, bathing, everything. We've cleared our schedules." I should have noticed the glance that passed between them, fleeting but loaded with something I was too drugged to interpret. Instead, I felt a surge of gratitude. "Thank you," I rasped. "I know this isn't how any of you wanted to spend your summer." Before my accident, I'd been Raymond Delacroix, the unstoppable force behind Delacroix Construction. I'd built the company from nothing after escaping my father's shadow. Hank Delacroix had been a mean drunk who taught me only what not to become. I'd worked my way up from day laborer to foreman, saved every penny, and started my own business at 25. Now we handled major commercial projects across 3 states. I'd fought for everything I had, and I'd given my family everything I never had growing up: stability, luxury, opportunity. I'd missed dinners and weekends to build something lasting for them. Now, for the first time, I needed them. The nurse provided detailed instructions. Dr. Landry explained to my family, "Mr. Delacroix will need help getting in and out of bed, bathing, and managing his medication schedule, which is absolutely critical. The first 2 weeks are especially important." "We understand," Melanie said firmly. "Ray is our priority." As they wheeled me toward the exit the next morning, I spotted Melanie texting rapidly, her manicured nails clicking against her screen. Preston and Bailey huddled together, whispering. I blamed my unease on the medication. The first day home went smoothly. Melanie helped me to the hospital bed we'd rented for the downstairs guest room. Bailey brought my medications on schedule, and Preston helped me to the bathroom when needed. I drifted in and out of a painkiller haze, grateful for their support. I woke early the second morning to find Melanie packing a suitcase. "What's going on?" I asked, struggling to sit up. She jumped slightly. "Oh, you're awake. I was going to talk to you about this at breakfast." She sat on the edge of the bed, not quite meeting my eyes. There's been a slight change of plans. Something cold settled in my stomach. "What kind of change?" "You remember that Lake Tahoe trip we booked months ago? The one with the non-refundable deposit?" I stared at her. "The family vacation? You're still going?" "Now." She sighed, as if I were being unreasonable. "Ray, it's a 5-star resort. We'd lose thousands. Preston and Bailey have been looking forward to it all semester. But the doctor said—" "I've got it all figured out," she interrupted. "Meals prepped in the fridge, medications labeled by day and time. We'll only be gone 10 days, and you can call us anytime." 10 days. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. "Melanie, I can barely get to the bathroom alone. We've set everything up in reach. And I've asked Sonia to check on you." Sonia was our cleaning lady who came once a week. She was 65 years old and barely spoke English. "You promised." My voice cracked embarrassingly. "All of you promised to help me." Melanie's face hardened slightly. Don't make this difficult, Ray. We've been planning this forever. Preston and Bailey appeared in the doorway, already dressed for travel. Dad, we're really sorry, Bailey said, looking genuinely conflicted. But Mom says you'll be okay, and nothing changes the fact that we're going, Preston finished firmly. The resort has that business networking event I told you about, remember? I can't miss that opportunity. I looked at my family, really looked at them, and saw strangers. These people, who I'd sacrificed everything for, couldn't sacrifice 10 days of vacation for me. When do you leave? I asked quietly. Our flight's at noon, Melanie said, relief evident in her voice. I've left detailed instructions on the kitchen counter. For hours later, they were gone. I lay in my bed, pain radiating through my body, and listened to the silence of my empty house. Chapter 2. Abandoned. Day 3 after surgery was when everything fell apart. The medication schedule became confused. Was it time for the high-dose painkiller or the anti-inflammatory? The typed instructions Melanie left were unclear, and my mind was foggy from pain and previous doses. I called her cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. Same with Preston and Bailey. I managed to drag myself to the kitchen, one excruciating step at a time, using the walker the hospital had provided. The prepped meals Melanie promised were just sandwich ingredients and 3 frozen dinners. The microwave was too high for me to safely use while balancing on my walker. By evening, hunger and pain had become twin torturers. I finally reached Melanie on the 5th try. We're at dinner, Ray, she answered, sounding annoyed. The background noise told me they were at a restaurant, laughing, clinking glasses. Can this wait? No, it can't, I said through gritted teeth. I need help figuring out which medication. Hold on, she interrupted. I heard her moving somewhere quieter. What's the problem? I labeled everything. The instructions aren't clear, and I can barely move, Melanie. I haven't eaten since breakfast. A brief silence. You're a grown man, Ray. Figure it out. I had major spinal surgery 3 days ago. My voice rose with disbelief. The doctor said I needed help. Don't guilt-trip me, she snapped. We're on vacation, not your servants. The casual cruelty of her words stunned me into silence. In the background, I heard a male voice asking if everything was okay. The voice wasn't Preston's. Who's that? I asked softly. A pause. Just the waiter, she said too quickly. Look, I need to go. Follow the pill schedule as best you can. We'll call tomorrow. They didn't call tomorrow. Or the next day. I survived on water from the bathroom sink and crackers I could reach from the bed. The pain became a living thing, clawing at my insides. On day 5, I dragged myself to my office down the hall, determined to call my doctor. My desk phone was dead, the line disconnected. My cell phone was nearly out of battery, and I couldn't find my charger. In desperation, I booted up my computer to email my doctor, and that's when everything changed. Melanie had left her email logged in. At first, I thought I was hallucinating from pain and medication. The email chain was between my wife and someone named Benjamin Walsh. The subject line, Tahoe Getaway. Can't wait to feel your body against mine with nothing but the lake view as witness, read one message from this Benjamin. Ray's surgery was perfect timing, Melanie had replied. The kids think it's just a family vacation. 10 days of freedom. My hands trembled as I kept reading. The affair had been going on for over a year. Benjamin Walsh was my business partner Neil Walsh's cousin, a fact that added another layer of betrayal. The emails revealed that Preston and Bailey knew about the affair. They didn't approve, but they'd agreed to participate in this family vacation because Benjamin had promised Preston introductions to investors and Bailey his summer internship at his marketing firm. I read every email, each word a knife. Then I noticed a notification for a shared photo album. With numb fingers, I clicked it. There they were, my family and my wife's lover, posing in front of a luxury lake house. Melanie wrapped in Benjamin's arms. Preston shaking hands with men in expensive suits. Bailey lounging by a pool. All of them smiling, not a care in the world, while I lay neglected in agony. Thanks for showing me who you really are, I whispered to the empty room. I managed one phone call before my cell died completely. Not to Melanie or my children. Not even to Dr. Landry. I called Hugh Bannister, my oldest friend and the only person who knew everything about me, including the darkness I kept buried. "Hugh," I said when he answered. "I need you." He arrived 6 hours later with supplies, medication, and cold fury in his eyes. "Jesus Christ, Ray," he said, taking in my unwashed body, the empty water glasses, the confusion of pills. "They left you like this." "They left me for dead," I corrected quietly. "And now I'm going to return the favor." Chapter 3. The Decision. Hugh moved into my guest room for the next 2 weeks. A retired military medic turned private security consultant, he approached my recovery with tactical precision. He administered medications, changed bandages, helped me bathe, and cooked actual meals. More importantly, he listened as I poured out every bitter detail of my family's betrayal. "They've been laughing at me for God knows how long," I said one evening as we sat on the back patio. I was finally mobile enough to venture outside with a cane. My own children chose a stranger over their father because of what he could offer them. Hugh's weathered face remained impassive, but I knew he was furious on my behalf. We'd grown up together in the same hardscrabble neighborhood, had each other's backs through every fight and setback. Hugh had been the best man at my wedding and godfather to both my children. "What are you thinking, Ray?" he asked carefully. He knew me well enough to see the cold calculation behind my pain. "I'm thinking it's time they learned what it feels like to be abandoned," I replied. "I've got 2 weeks before they return. That's enough time." "For what?" I turned to him, decision crystallizing. "To disappear. Not just leave, disappear, so completely they'll never find me unless I want to be found." Hugh nodded slowly. "You have the means." He was referring to what we'd always called my ghost protocol, a detailed escape plan I'd created years ago during a period of paranoia after my company's first major success. I'd established alternate identities, offshore accounts, and property holdings that couldn't be traced back to me. I never thought I'd use them against my own family. "They think I'm just a wallet with legs," I said bitterly. "A provider who can be discarded when inconvenient. They have no idea who I really am or what I'm capable of." "What about the company?" Hugh asked. "Neil can buy my shares. He's wanted to for years." My jaw tightened, though I'm going to make sure he understands exactly what his cousin has done. Over the next few days, as my physical strength gradually returned, Hugh helped me set my plan in motion. We transferred funds, contacted my lawyer, and prepared documentation. I recorded videos on my phone documenting my condition and the abandoned state of the house. I forwarded the damning emails to secure accounts. By the time Melanie texted that they'd be home in 2 days, every trace of Raymond Delacroix, the devoted father and husband, was ready to vanish. "Are you absolutely sure about this?" Hugh asked the night before their return. "Once you trigger this, there's no going back." I looked around at the house I'd built, filled with memories both good and bad. For 23 years, I believed I was building a legacy of love. Now I understood I'd just been building a comfortable prison for myself. "I've never been more certain of anything," I replied. "They made their choice. Now I'm making mine." 2 days later, my family returned from Lake Tahoe to find an empty house. No trace of my hospital bed, medication, or personal belongings. Just a note on the kitchen counter that read, "I received your message loud and clear. Now you'll receive mine." The game had begun. Chapter 4. Ghost Protocol. The Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina offered perfect seclusion while I recovered and planned. Hugh owned a cabin there, off-grid and untraceable. As summer heat gave way to fall coolness, I rebuilt my body through rigorous physical therapy and my mind through meticulous strategy. 42 messages from Bailey today, Hugh reported, checking the burner phone we used to monitor my family's desperate attempts at contact. Most of them variations on "please talk to us," were begging. I continued my push-ups, face impassive. And Melanie? 28 calls, 15 texts. She's threatening to file a missing persons report. I snorted. Let her. I left a video with my lawyer explaining I'm leaving voluntarily. The police won't waste resources. According to our surveillance, my disappearance had thrown my family into chaos. Melanie had to explain to friends, neighbors, and business associates why her husband had vanished immediately after major surgery. The story she concocted that I was at a specialized rehabilitation facility was already unraveling. Preston had been forced to put his networking opportunities on hold to help manage the company in my absence. Bailey had returned to UCLA, but was failing classes, distracted by the family drama. And Benjamin Walsh had mysteriously stepped back from the relationship, sensing complications. They still think this is temporary, I said, toweling off sweat. That I'm having a midlife crisis or tantrum. They expect me to come crawling back when I run out of money or resolve. Hugh raised an eyebrow. And that's where they're wrong. Catastrophically wrong, I agreed. My plan required patience. While my family scrambled to maintain appearances, I was reconstructing myself. The beard I'd grown disguised my face. Daily mountain hikes had hardened my body beyond its pre-injury state. Even my voice had changed. I'd worked with a dialect coach online to adopt a slight southern drawl. Raymond Delacroix was disappearing, and in his place, Robert Dawson was emerging, a successful real estate investor with a background no one would question too deeply. 3 months after my disappearance, I was ready for phase 2. Hugh drove me to Charlotte, where I boarded a private plane to the Cayman Islands. There, I met with bankers who knew me only as Robert Dawson, activated financial instruments established years earlier, and set in motion the economic noose that would slowly tighten around my family's necks. You're really going to let them lose the house? Hugh asked during our encrypted video call that evening. I provided for them generously for decades. I replied coolly. The house, the cars, the vacations, the education, all paid for by the man they abandoned without food or medication. They made their choice. And Neil Walsh, your business partner? My expression hardened. I've sold him my shares at fair market value. But he's about to discover that his cousin's affair with my wife violated multiple morality clauses in our partnership agreement. You're scorching the earth, Ray. No, I corrected. I'm just removing what was never actually theirs. They'll keep their clothes, personal items, and whatever they've saved independently. But everything I built, that's coming with me. By Christmas, 6 months after my disappearance, the effects were becoming clear. Melanie had been forced to sell her luxury car to cover mounting debts. Preston, unable to manage in my absence, had been sidelined at the company as Neil brought in experienced management. Bailey had dropped out of UCLA, unable to afford tuition after the college fund I'd established mysteriously froze. Their text messages had evolved from angry demands to confused pleas to desperate bargaining. Dad, please, Bailey wrote in her latest message. Mom had to take a job at the mall. We might lose the house. Whatever we did, we're sorry. Just tell us what you want us to do. I didn't respond, but I took no pleasure in their suffering. This wasn't about punishment. It was about consequences. For the first time in their privileged lives, my wife and children were experiencing the harsh reality of betrayal. The reality I'd lived through in that empty house, in pain and alone. In January, I returned to the United States, not to my former home, but to Denver, Colorado, where Robert Dawson purchased a penthouse apartment with sweeping mountain views. With my new identity firmly established, I began building a new real estate development company, focusing on sustainable, affordable housing, the antithesis of the luxury properties my family had always expected. They hired a private investigator. Hugh informed me during his first visit to my new home. Amateur hour. The guy's looking for Raymond Delacroix, not Robert Dawson. I nodded, gazing out at the snow-capped Rockies. And Benjamin Walsh? Hugh's mouth twitched in what might have been satisfaction. Left town after his cousin's business, took a nosedive. Apparently, he's not interested in Melanie now that the money's gone. Of course not, I said quietly. He wanted what I built, not who she is. The final pieces are in place, Hugh said. Are you ready for the last phase? I turned to face my oldest friend. It's time for the Delacroix family to learn that actions have permanent consequences. Chapter 5, Visible Ghosts. Spring brought renewal to Denver, but final reckonings to my former family. On the anniversary of my surgery, a date etched in my memory by pain and betrayal, I put the final phase of my plan into motion. First came the certified letters from my attorney, delivered simultaneously to Melanie, Preston, and Bailey at the modest apartment they now shared. The letters outlined in precise legal language exactly what they had lost and why. Melanie's divorce papers cited abandonment and adultery, with copies of the incriminating emails attached. Her settlement, exactly what our prenuptial agreement specified for infidelity, nothing. Preston received documentation showing that his shares in Delacroix Construction had been legally forfeited when he breached his fiduciary duty by aiding in his mother's deception during my medical emergency. Bailey received notice that while her college trust had been frozen, it wasn't gone. It had been converted to a scholarship fund for underprivileged students, with the stipulation that she could never benefit from it. Each letter ended with the same statement. Raymond Delacroix has moved forward with his life and requests no further contact. That should be the end of it, I told Hugh during our weekly encrypted call. They know the truth now. They can accept it and move on. Hugh's silence told me he disagreed. What? I demanded. You know your family, Ray. This won't be the end. He was right. Within days, my lawyer reported that Melanie was contesting the divorce, claiming duress and abandonment on my part. Preston had consulted 3 different attorneys about challenging the share forfeiture. Bailey had shown up at the Scholarship Foundation's office, causing a scene. Their desperation wasn't surprising. In the months since my disappearance, their lives had unraveled completely. The house had been foreclosed on. Melanie's job at the mall hadn't lasted. Preston had been fully removed from the company after Neil Walsh discovered his complicity in covering up Melanie's affair with his cousin. Bailey was waiting tables at a diner instead of finishing her degree. They were experiencing exactly what I'd intended, the consequences of their choices. What I hadn't expected was Benjamin Walsh's reappearance in Melanie's life. My surveillance reported that he'd returned, supposedly to support her through this difficult time. In reality, he was after the one asset he believed she still had, potential claims to my fortune. It was time to become visible. Under my new identity as Robert Dawson, I arranged to purchase the building where Melanie worked. A routine staff meeting was called, with a new owner scheduled to address employees. I arrived in an expensive suit, my beard now stylishly trimmed, hair slightly longer and touched with distinguished gray. Melanie didn't recognize me at first. She sat in the back row, slumped with exhaustion in her retail uniform. Only when I began speaking, letting my cultivated accent slip slightly, did her head snap up. Our eyes met across the room, and I watched the blood drain from her face. As the new owner, I continued smoothly, ignoring her visible shock. I'll be making some changes to operations. Those who have demonstrated loyalty and work ethic will be rewarded. Those who haven't, I smiled thinly. Well, the market is competitive these days. After the meeting, I retreated to my office and waited. Within minutes, there was a frantic knock at the door. Come in, Melanie, I called. She burst in, trembling. Ray, is it really you? Where have you? Why did you? She moved toward me, arms outstretched. I held up a hand, stopping her. That's not my name anymore, and you've lost the right to ask me anything. Please, she begged, tears spilling. You have to listen. I've lost everything. The kids are suffering, much like I suffered alone after surgery. I asked mildly, when you were enjoying Lake Tahoe with your lover? Her face crumpled. It was a terrible mistake. I didn't think. That's correct. You didn't think I would ever stand up for myself. You didn't think your comfortable life could disappear. You didn't think consequences would apply to you. Ray, Robert, whatever you're calling yourself, she whispered. I'm still your wife. Not for much longer, I replied. And this meeting isn't about reconciliation. It's about clarity. I want you to understand exactly why your life has fallen apart, and I want you to explain it to our children. I slid a folder across the desk. Inside is documentation of everything. The emails, the photos from your vacation, the text messages between you and Benjamin planning how to leave me alone after surgery. I want Preston and Bailey to see who their mother really is. They'll hate me, she whispered. Perhaps, I agreed. Or perhaps they'll recognize their own complicity. Either way, they deserve the truth. And then what? She asked. After we've seen all this, what happens? I leaned back in my chair. Then nothing. Your life continues as it is. My life continues as Robert Dawson. The only difference is that illusions will be stripped away. You can't mean that, she said desperately. After 23 years, you can't just... Actually, I can. You taught me that, Melanie. When you said, we're on vacation, not your servants, you taught me that decades of marriage mean nothing when convenience is at stake. I stood, indicating our meeting was over. You have 48 hours to share those documents with Preston and Bailey. After that, I'll do it myself. And Benjamin? She asked quietly. I smiled coldly. Mr. Walsh is about to have his own reckoning. Chapter 6. Web of Consequences. Benjamin Walsh lived in a glass and steel downtown loft that screamed new money. Exactly the type of flashy, substanceless dwelling that would appeal to a man who pursued married women and leveraged family connections for business advantage. I studied his habits for a week before making my move. Every morning, he left his building at precisely 7:15 a.m., walked to a local coffee shop, then took his BMW to his office. His predictability made him vulnerable. On a crisp Monday morning, I waited in the coffee shop, newspaper raised to obscure my face. When Benjamin entered, I watched him order his usual complicated espresso drink, then followed him to the sugar station. "Excuse me," I said, deliberately bumping into him and causing him to spill his drink. "Hey, watch it," he snapped, then froze as recognition dawned. "Delacroix, let's talk outside," I said quietly. "Unless you prefer, I make a scene about how you slept with my wife while I was recovering from surgery." His face paled, and he followed me to a secluded bench in the nearby park. "How did you find me?" he asked, visibly nervous. "Finding people is easy when you have resources," I replied. "And despite your best efforts with my wife, I still have considerable resources. Look, whatever happened between Melanie and me was a conspiracy to abandon an injured man," I finished. "Don't pretend it was a love story, Benjamin. We both know you were after my connections, my lifestyle. You wanted what I built." He swallowed hard. "What do you want from me? Money? I don't have much left since Neil's company." "I'm well aware of your financial situation," I interrupted. "After all, I engineered it." His eyes widened. "You? But how?" "The same way I'm going to engineer what happens next if you don't follow my instructions exactly." I handed him an envelope. Inside are plane tickets to Phoenix and information on a job opportunity. Your qualifications have been slightly enhanced to ensure you get the position. "You want me to move to Arizona?" he asked incredulously. "I want you out of my family's life permanently," I corrected. "The job is legitimate. The apartment is paid for 6 months. Consider it a fresh start. One you don't deserve, but I'm providing anyway. And if I refuse?" I smiled thinly. "Then the evidence of how you manipulated my children with false promises while sleeping with their mother gets sent to every business contact in your phone. The documentation of your involvement in my abandonment goes to the police to explore potential criminal negligence. And the records of your previous affairs, yes, I know about those too, go to the women's husbands." Benjamin stared at me, hatred and fear warring in his expression. "You're insane." "No," I replied calmly. "I'm thorough. You have 48 hours to accept the job and be on that plane. After that, the consequences begin." I stood to leave, then paused. "One more thing. If you contact Melanie or my children ever again, even to say goodbye, all the evidence drops immediately. Am I clear?" He nodded mutely. "Good. Enjoy Phoenix, Mr. Walsh. I hear the dry heat is good for people with character deficiencies." That evening, I met Preston at his cramped one-bedroom apartment. Unlike his mother, he recognized me immediately when I knocked on his door. "Dad," he whispered, looking like he'd seen a ghost. "You're alive." "Disappointed?" I asked, stepping past him into the apartment. "No. God, no. We've been looking everywhere for you." "Why did you?" His voice broke. "Why did you destroy everything? The company, our home, my future." I surveyed his living space, a far cry from the luxury he'd grown up with. "I didn't destroy anything, Preston. I simply took back what was mine." "But, did you read the documents your mother received?" I interrupted. He nodded, not meeting my eyes. "The emails, the arrangements for the trip. You knew about her affair with Benjamin Walsh before we even left for the hospital, didn't you?" His silence was answer enough. "You chose a business networking opportunity over your father's health and safety," I continued. You chose Benjamin's empty promises over your obligations to the man who gave you everything. I thought you'd be okay, he mumbled. Mom said, your mother lied. I cut in, and you chose to believe her because it was convenient. Because a luxury vacation and career opportunities mattered more than basic human decency. Preston sank onto his worn couch, head in his hands. So, this is punishment? Taking everything away. This is reality, I corrected. You're experiencing the natural consequence of your choices. For the first time in your life, you're not being protected from your own actions. What do you want from me? He asked, looking up with reddened eyes. Nothing, I replied simply. I want nothing from you, Preston. Not a relationship, not forgiveness, not understanding. I simply wanted you to see me one last time and know exactly why things happened as they did. That's it? You're just going to disappear again? I moved toward the door. Raymond Delacroix disappeared a year ago. I'm Robert Dawson now, and Robert has no children. Dad, please, he begged, rising. We can fix this. I'll do anything. I paused at the door. That's the final lesson, Preston. Some things can't be fixed. Some betrayals can't be undone. The last visit was to Bailey at the diner where she worked. I sat in her section, menu raised, watching her hurry between tables. Her face was thinner, her movements harried. When she finally approached my table, she didn't look up from her notepad. What can I get you today? She asked mechanically. The truth would be nice, I replied in my natural voice. Her head snapped up, eyes widening in shock. Dad? She whispered, nearly dropping her notepad. I gestured to the empty seat across from me. Sit down, Bailey. She glanced nervously at her manager, then slid into the booth. Where have you been? Why did I leave? I finished. Or why did I take back everything I provided? The answer to both is in the documents your mother should have shared with you. Tears filled her eyes. She showed us. The emails, the photos, everything. But Dad, I didn't know how bad it was when we left. I swear I thought you'd be okay. You chose a poolside vacation over helping your father recover from spinal surgery, I said evenly. You chose Benjamin Walsh's empty internship promises over basic human decency. I was wrong, she admitted, a tear sliding down her cheek. We were all wrong. But does that mean you have to destroy our lives completely? I had to drop out of UCLA. Mom can barely afford rent. Preston is experiencing the natural consequences of his choices. I finished. As are you. As is your mother. So that's it. No forgiveness. No second chances. I studied my daughter, seeing both the woman she'd become and the little girl who once sat on my shoulders at construction sites, proudly watching her daddy build things. Forgiveness requires remorse, Bailey. Not remorse for getting caught or facing consequences. Real remorse for the harm caused. I have yet to hear anyone in this family express that. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry for leaving you alone when you needed us. For choosing a vacation over helping you. For everything. For a moment, something cracked in my resolve. A hairline fracture in the wall I'd built around my heart. Then I remembered lying on the floor in agony, unable to reach food or medication, while my daughter posed for Instagram photos with my wife's lover. I believe that you think you're sorry, I said finally. But true remorse changes behavior, not just words. You had 19 years of my unconditional love and support. You threw it away in a moment when it became inconvenient. I stood, leaving money for a tip that would exceed her entire day's earnings. Goodbye, Bailey. I wish you well in the life you've chosen. Her hand shot out, grabbing mine. Will we ever see you again? I gently removed her fingers from my wrist. Raymond Delacroix is gone. Robert Dawson has no daughter. As I walked away, I heard her call after me, "We still love you, Dad." I didn't look back. Love without loyalty is just another empty promise, and I'd had enough of those to last a lifetime. Chapter 7. Phoenix Rising. 1 year to the day after my family abandoned me, I stood on the balcony of my Denver penthouse, watching the sun rise over the mountains. Robert Dawson's real estate development company had flourished, specializing in affordable, sustainable housing that was the antithesis of the luxury properties my former family had taken for granted. My phone buzzed. Hugh, calling with his weekly update. "They're still looking for you," he reported without preamble. "Melanie hired another private investigator, but they're still searching for Raymond Delacroix, not Robert Dawson. And Benjamin Walsh took the Arizona job. Smart move on his part. I nodded, though Hugh couldn't see me. Benjamin had recognized that crossing me would be catastrophic. In his own way, he'd shown more sense than my own family. Any change with Preston or Bailey? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Hugh paused. Preston's working construction now. Entry-level with a commercial outfit in Charlotte. Bailey's back in school, community college, working 2 jobs to pay for it. Something tightened in my chest. Despite everything, hearing that my children were rebuilding their lives stirred complicated emotions. Ray, Hugh said carefully, it's been a year. You made your point. They've suffered the consequences. Maybe it's time to... To what? I interrupted sharply. Forgive and forget? Welcome them back with open arms? They left me to suffer alone, Hugh. They chose luxury and convenience over basic human decency. I'm not saying forgive them, Hugh replied. I'm saying maybe it's time to stop actively monitoring them, to truly move forward as Robert Dawson. I fell silent, considering his words. Was I truly moving forward if I remained tethered to their lives, even as an observer? I'll think about it, I finally said. But first, there's one more thing I need to do. That evening, I attended a charity gala for affordable housing initiatives in Denver. As one of the major donors, Robert Dawson was expected to make an appearance. What no one expected was for Neil Walsh to also be in attendance. I spotted him across the ballroom, grayer and more weathered than when I'd last seen him. Our eyes met, and recognition dawned on his face. Not of Raymond Delacroix, but of the mysterious investor who had systematically dismantled portions of his business over the past year. He approached cautiously, drink in hand. Robert Dawson, I presume? Your reputation precedes you. As does yours, Mr. Walsh, I replied coolly. Though I understand your company has faced challenges recently. His jaw tightened. Nothing we can't overcome. Business has cycles. Indeed it does. Much like loyalty and betrayal. Confusion crossed his features, then slowly transformed into dawning horror as he studied my face more carefully. My God, he whispered. Ray, I smiled thinly. That name no longer applies to me. But I'm curious. How much did you know about your cousin's relationship with my wife while I was recovering from surgery? Neil paled visibly. I swear I had no idea until after you disappeared. When I found out, I cut ties with Benjamin immediately. Yet you benefited from my absence, I noted. Acquire my shares at market value, took full control of the company. That was business, not personal, he protested. I thought you'd abandoned everything. I abandoned nothing, I corrected. I reclaimed what was mine and removed myself from people who had proven unworthy of trust. Neil glanced around nervously. What do you want from me? Is this some kind of blackmail? I laughed softly. No, Neil. I have everything I want already. This conversation is merely closure. A courtesy to inform you that Robert Dawson's investment group will no longer be targeting your holdings. Relief washed over his face. You are backing off? I've made my point, I replied. Your business will survive, though perhaps never return to its former glory. Consider it the cost of associating with people who lack basic decency. And my cousin, he asked hesitantly, is enjoying a new life in Phoenix. I suggest you let him remain there undisturbed. As I turned to leave, Neil caught my arm. Ray, Robert, whatever you're calling yourself now. For what it's worth, I'm sorry about what happened to you. No one deserves that kind of betrayal. I regarded him silently for a moment. You're right, Neil. No one deserves that kind of betrayal. Remember that the next time you're tempted to look the other way for family's sake. Walking away, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. The last business connection to my old life had been addressed. Robert Dawson was truly free to exist without Raymond Delacroix's shadows. That night, I called Hugh. You're right, I said when he answered. It's time to stop monitoring them. Whatever they do now is their own path. Hugh's relief was palpable. I think that's wise, Ray. You've built something good as Robert. Don't let the past poison it. There's just one more thing, I added. I want you to arrange a trust for Bailey's education. Anonymous. Enough to cover community college and transfer to a state university if she maintains her grades. She's working hard to rebuild. I won't stand in the way of that. And Preston? Melanie? Nothing, I said firmly. Preston chose his path with open eyes. And Melanie made her choice long ago. You're a complicated man, my friend, Hugh said quietly. No, I corrected. Just a man who understands that not all betrayals are equal. Chapter 8. Confrontations. 3 days after my conversation with Neil Walsh, as I was leaving my office in downtown Denver, a familiar figure stepped out of the shadows of the parking garage. Hello, Robert, Melanie said, using my new name deliberately. Or do you still answer to Ray when no one's around? I kept my expression neutral, though inwardly I was calculating how she'd found me. Neil Walsh was the obvious answer. Melanie, I acknowledged, you're a long way from home. She looked different, thinner, with stress lines around her eyes, and cheaper clothes than she'd been accustomed to. But her spine was straight, her gaze direct. Home, she laughed bitterly. You took our home. You took everything. I took back what was mine. I corrected. What you forfeited when you chose a luxury vacation with your lover over basic human decency. She flinched, but didn't back down. I've a year to think about what happened, to recognize my mistakes and live with the consequences. But this vendetta goes beyond justice, Ray. This is cruelty. Cruelty? I raised an eyebrow. Like leaving a man who just had spinal surgery alone, without proper food or medication. That kind of cruelty. I was wrong, she admitted, her voice cracking slightly. Terribly, unforgivably wrong. What I did was selfish and callous, and I will regret it for the rest of my life. Yet here you are, seeking what? Forgiveness? Restoration? Money? Closure, she said simply. And to deliver these. She held out a manila envelope. When I made no move to take it, she placed it on the hood of my car. Letters from Preston and Bailey, she explained. Things they need to say to you, whether you want to hear them or not. And from you, I asked coldly. I've said my piece to your face. I wasn't a good wife, Ray. Even before everything. I took you for granted. Resented your work hours while enjoying the lifestyle they provided. When Benjamin showed interest, it fed something in me that I should have addressed honestly with you instead. Her candor was unexpected. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the woman I'd once loved, direct, unflinching. That doesn't excuse what you did, I said. Nothing excuses what I did, she agreed. But I want you to know that while you've been systematically destroying our lives, I've been recognizing how I destroyed something precious long before you disappeared. She turned to leave, then paused. The divorce papers. I've signed them. They're in there too. You win, Ray. You're free. I've been free for a year, I replied. She looked back, eyes glistening. Have you? Because the man I married, for all his flaws and mine, wasn't cruel. He was tough, demanding, sometimes distant, but never cruel. This elaborate punishment scheme? This isn't freedom. It's a prison of your own making. After she left, I sat in my car for a long time, the envelope untouched beside me. Finally, I opened it. Inside were 3 letters, one from Melanie, despite what she'd said, and one each from Preston and Bailey. I read them in the silent car, each word landing like a stone in still water. Preston wrote of shame and regret, of the hard lessons learned working with his hands after a lifetime of privilege, of understanding, finally, the value of what I'd built and the depth of his betrayal. Bailey wrote of her struggle to rebuild, of working 2 jobs while studying, of nightmares where she returned to an empty house to find me gone. She wrote of love that persisted despite everything. And Melanie, her letter was the shortest and most devastating. I didn't love him, she wrote. I loved the reflection of myself in his eyes, younger, desired, unencumbered by responsibility. It was never about him, but about escaping who I'd become, in destroying our family. I've been forced to face that woman in the mirror without illusions. I don't ask forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I ask only that you don't punish our children for my failures. They were following my lead, as they always had. Direct your justified rage at me alone. I drove home in silence, the letters burning a hole in my pocket. For the first time in a year, the righteousness of my revenge fell hollow. That night, I received a text from an unknown number. Dad, it's Bailey. Mom told us she found you. I don't expect forgiveness or money or anything. I just want you to know that I understand now what real consequences are, and I'm trying to be someone you could be proud of, even if you never know it. I didn't respond, but I didn't block the number either. 3 days later, Preston appeared in my office building. Security called up, and against my better judgment, I agreed to see him. He entered cautiously, taking in the vast windows and modern furniture of Robert Dawson's domain. The past year had changed him. The pampered boy was gone, replaced by a man with calloused hands and a humbler bearing. "I won't take much of your time," he began. "I just needed to see you once, face to face, to say I'm sorry. Not for getting caught or facing consequences. For the choice I made. For valuing opportunity over loyalty. For failing as a son when you needed me most." I studied him silently, noting the construction dust on his boots, the simplicity of his clothes. "You're working in the industry," I observed. He nodded. "Started as a laborer, learning from the ground up the way you did. It's harder than I ever imagined. Makes me realize how much I took for granted." "What do you want from me, Preston?" "Nothing," he said, meeting my gaze directly. "I came to give, not take. To offer an apology that you deserve, whether you accept it or not." Something shifted in me, a tectonic movement of emotion long suppressed. Not forgiveness, exactly, but perhaps the first tremor that might eventually lead there. "You were following your mother's lead?" I said finally. "No," he countered firmly. "I was a grown man making my own choice. I chose wrong. That's on me, not her." His willingness to take full responsibility surprised me. It was unexpected maturity. "Is there anything else?" I asked, my voice carefully neutral. He hesitated, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a worn photograph. "I thought you might want this back. I've been carrying it since we had to pack up the house." It was a picture from 20 years ago, Preston at age 2 on my shoulders at a construction site. Both of us wearing hard hats, his tiny hands gripping my forehead, both of us laughing. "Keep it," I said, pushing down a surge of emotion. "It belongs to your past, not mine." "Our past," he corrected quietly. "Whatever happens now, that moment was real." After he left, I stood at my window for a long time, looking out at the Denver skyline, but seeing only ghosts of what had been and what might have been. That evening, I called Hugh. "They found me," I said without preamble. "I know," he replied. "Neil Walsh figured it out after your conversation at the gala. He told Melanie." "You knew and didn't warn me?" Hugh sighed. "Maybe it was time, Ray. Maybe this confrontation needed to happen for all of you to move forward." "I moved forward," I insisted. "Robert Dawson has no past to reconcile." "Bullshit," Hugh said bluntly. "Raymond Delacroix is still in there, carrying all that pain and rage. Until you face it head on, Robert Dawson is just a mask." His words stung because they contained truth I wasn't ready to acknowledge. I ended the call without responding. That night, I dreamed of the hospital room after my surgery, but in the dream, my family stayed. They helped me heal, supported me, showed the love I'd believed in for decades. I woke with tears on my face and fury in my heart. Not at them, but at myself for still carrying the wound so deeply. Chapter 9. Final Reckonings. 2 weeks after the confrontations with my former family, I stood in the boardroom of my company, finalizing plans for our most ambitious project yet, a mixed-use development that would provide affordable housing, community spaces, and small business opportunities in a neglected part of Denver. The Robert Dawson Foundation will contribute 30% of the funding, I told my executive team. The rest will come from our investment partners and municipal bonds. "This could transform the neighborhood," my lead architect commented, studying the plans. "It's exactly the kind of project that defines who we are as a company." Who we are. The phrase echoed in my mind as the meeting concluded. Robert Dawson had built something meaningful from the ashes of Raymond Delacroix's life, something perhaps more valuable than what had been lost. As I returned to my office, my assistant intercepted me. "Sir, there's a young woman waiting to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she's very insistent. Says her name is Bailey." I paused, conflicting emotions warring within me. "How long has she been waiting?" "Nearly 3 hours," my assistant replied. "I told her you were in meetings all day, but she said she'd wait as long as necessary." After a moment's consideration, I nodded. Send her in. Bailey entered cautiously, her eyes taking in the office before settling on me. She looked both familiar and like a stranger, my daughter, and yet not my daughter. Thank you for seeing me, she said, remaining standing even when I gestured to a chair. I'll be brief. What can I do for you? I asked, maintaining Robert Dawson's slight southern drawl. She smiled faintly. You don't have to keep up the accent with me, but I understand if it helps maintain the distance you need. I switched back to my natural voice. Why are you here, Bailey? To thank you, she said simply. The anonymous trust for my education. I know it was you. I stiffened. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do, she replied gently. The timing, the conditions, the amounts, they're too specific to be coincidence. And though you want to hate us, you still care enough to make sure I can finish school. If you came for more. I didn't, she interrupted. I came to show you this. She placed a document on my desk, her grades from community college. Straight A's across the board. I'm transferring to Colorado State in the fall, she continued. Not because it's prestigious or expensive, but because they have an excellent social work program. I want to help people who've been abandoned or betrayed by those they trusted. I've learned something about that perspective. I studied her face, searching for manipulation or deception, but found only earnest determination. Why social work? I asked despite myself. You always wanted marketing, fashion, glamorous things. I wanted those things because they seemed easy and fun, she admitted. Now, I want work that matters, that helps fix broken things. Maybe because I couldn't fix our family. Something caught in my throat. Some things can't be fixed, Bailey. I know, she said softly, but they can be acknowledged. The pain can be honored rather than ignored. That's what I'm learning to do. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. Mom and Preston don't know I'm here. This was just between you and me. A thank you, not an attempt to change your mind or heart. Those belong to you alone. After she left, I sat motionless, staring at her transcript on my desk. The straight A's represented more than academic achievement. They were evidence of a transformation, a consequence of consequences. That evening, I met Hugh for dinner at a quiet restaurant overlooking the city lights. Bailey came to see me today, I told him after we'd ordered. She knew about the education trust. Hugh nodded. Smart girl. Always was. She's studying social work now. Wants to help people who've been abandoned. Interesting choice, Hugh observed neutrally. I toyed with my water glass. She thanked me, Hugh. No begging, no manipulation. Just gratitude. And how did that make you feel? I shot him an irritated glance. Don't play therapist with me. Not playing anything, he replied. Just asking a question friend to friend. I sighed, considering the truth of his question. It made me feel seen, like someone finally understood that this wasn't just about revenge or punishment. It was about justice. Consequences. And has justice been served? Hugh asked quietly. Has enough pain been inflicted to balance the scales? That's not fair, I protested. Isn't it? You crafted an elaborate plan to make them suffer as you suffered. They've lost their home, their status, their comfort. Melanie lost her husband and reputation. Preston lost his inheritance and position. They've spent a year paying for 10 days of cruelty and selfishness. At what point is the debt paid? I stared out at the city lights, considering his words. You think I should forgive them? I think, Hugh said carefully, that Robert Dawson has built something valuable and meaningful. Something that could be his legacy instead of his hiding place. I think holding on to Raymond Delacroix's pain serves no one, least of all you. And what would forgiveness even look like? I asked, genuinely uncertain. Welcome him back into my life? Pretend nothing happened? Hugh shook his head. Forgiveness doesn't mean restoration, Ray. It means releasing the active desire to see them suffer. It means allowing them, and yourself, to move forward without the weight of the past dictating every step. Later that night, standing on my penthouse balcony, I made a decision. Not about forgiveness, I wasn't ready for that, but about ending the active pursuit of retribution, about allowing natural consequences to unfold without my hand continually tipping the scales. The next morning, I called my lawyer. I want to establish 3 trusts, I instructed. One for Melanie Delacroix, one for Preston Delacroix, and one to formalize the existing arrangement for Bailey Delacroix. Generous ones, I assume, he asked, knowing my resources. Adequate, I corrected. Enough for Melanie to establish a modest home and living. Enough for Preston to finish his education, if he chooses. Bailey's remains for her education only. And the conditions? No contact requirements. No public acknowledgments. They receive quarterly payments regardless of their behavior toward me. That's unexpectedly unconditional, my lawyer observed. May I ask what prompted this change? I thought about Bailey's transcript, Preston's calloused hands, Melanie's direct gaze as she owned her mistakes without excuses. Justice has been served, I said simply. Continuing to pursue, it becomes something else entirely. Vengeance, he supplied. Precisely. And Robert Dawson isn't defined by vengeance. 3 days later, as I was preparing to leave for a business trip to Seattle, my security team alerted me to a visitor in the lobby. Preston. Send him up, I decided after a moment's consideration. When he entered my penthouse, he carried a toolbox and wore work clothes. Your assistant mentioned you had some cabinets that needed repair, he said by way of greeting. I'm between jobs this week. I stared at him, nonplussed. You came to fix my cabinets. He shrugged. I came to offer something I'm actually qualified to give. Not money or status or connections. Just skilled labor. The gesture, practical, humble, entirely unexpected, caught me off guard. The kitchen cabinet doors do stick, I admitted. Preston nodded and moved to the kitchen, setting down his toolbox and examining the hinges with professional focus. I watched him work skillfully, methodically, without complaint or expectation. You've learned, I observed. Starting from zero will do that, he replied without looking up. When everything's taken away, you figure out what you can actually build with your own 2 hands. As he finished adjusting the final hinge, testing the door's smooth swing, he added, Mom got notification of the trust you established. She cried for hours. It's not forgiveness, I said quickly. It's just mercy, Preston finished. We don't deserve it. We know that. He packed his tools with careful precision. The cabinets should work properly now. If they give you any more trouble, call me. No charge. It's the least I can do. After he left, I ran my hand over the smooth operation of the cabinet doors, thinking about things broken and things repaired. About mercy that wasn't forgiveness, but might someday lead there. That night, I received a text message from Melanie. Thank you for the trust. I don't deserve your kindness after my cruelty. The money will help establish a stable home, but the gesture itself means more, that perhaps someday, not now, but someday, there might be peace between us. I didn't respond, but I didn't delete the message either. 6 months later, I attended the groundbreaking ceremony for the Robert Dawson Foundation's affordable housing development. As I prepared to address the gathered crowd and press, I spotted 3 figures standing at the back, Melanie, Preston, and Bailey, watching quietly, making no attempt to approach or be acknowledged. Hugh appeared at my side. They asked me if they could come, said they wanted to witness something good you were building, even if they couldn't be part of it. I nodded slowly, processing the complexity of emotions their presence evoked. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of something that wasn't defined by pain. They can stay, I said finally, as long as they understand that Raymond Delacroix died 1.5 years ago. I'm Robert Dawson now. Hugh studied me carefully. And who exactly is Robert Dawson? Beyond the name and the accent, I looked out at the development site, the symbolic first shovel waiting to break ground on something new and hopeful. He's a man who builds things, I replied. Things that last. Things with purpose. And he doesn't define himself by what was taken from him, but by what he chooses to create. As I moved toward the podium, I felt the weight of their gazes but didn't look back. The past remained where it belonged, behind me. The future, with all its possibilities and uncertainties, lay in the foundations we were about to lay. I had survived betrayal, enacted justice, and now stood at the threshold of something new. Not forgiveness, perhaps, but freedom. Freedom from the need for revenge. Freedom to build rather than destroy. Freedom to move forward without the constant weight of looking back. In the end, that was the most ruthless revenge of all. not destroying my betrayers, but removing their power to define my future. Not forgetting what they had done, but refusing to be limited by it. And as I broke ground on the new development, I silently acknowledged what Raymond Delacroix had never understood but Robert Dawson had learned through fire. True power lies not in what we can take from others, but in what we choose to build for ourselves. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, Foundations. The sledgehammer connected with the wall in a satisfying crunch of plaster and wood. Dust billowed around Brock Maddox as he stepped back to admire his handiwork. At 42, he still preferred to get his hands dirty on demolition days. It kept him connected to the roots of Maddox Construction, the company he'd built from nothing into one of Boston's premier renovation firms. "Boss, the clients are here," called Dennis, his foreman. Brock dusted off his hands and rolled down his sleeves. The Peabody Mansion renovation was his biggest residential project yet. Exactly the type of high-profile job that had built his reputation for transforming historic properties into modern masterpieces while respecting their architectural integrity. Later that evening, Brock sat in his home office reviewing blueprints when the front door opened. Heels clicked across the marble foyer, a sound that once quickened his pulse but now tightened his jaw. Working late again, Aubrey Maddox appeared in the doorway, her blonde hair perfectly styled despite the late hour. At 36, she remained as stunning as when they'd met 8 years ago at the Governor's Charity Gala. "Big project," Brock replied without looking up. "Peabody wants changes to the East Wing." "You work too hard." Aubrey crossed the room and ran her fingers across his shoulders. "Remember when you used to leave the office before midnight? Remember when you used to be home before midnight?" Brock countered, immediately regretting the edge in his voice. Aubrey's fingers paused. "The museum fundraiser ran long. I told you I'd be late." Brock nodded, remembering a time when such explanations didn't feel rehearsed. Their marriage had begun like a fairy tale. The self-made contractor and the art curator from one of Boston's oldest families. The first 3 years were passionate, adventurous. Then something shifted. "Your father called," Brock said. "He wants us for dinner Sunday." Aubrey's expression flickered. "Did he say why? Since when does Stanford Porter need a reason to summon the peasant who married his daughter?" Brock's smile took the sting out of his words. "Mostly. He respects you," Aubrey insisted, but her eyes drifted away. "No, he respects what I've built. There's a difference." Brock closed his laptop. "Coming to bed? I need a shower first." As Aubrey left, Brock's phone buzzed. A text from his old Army buddy, Wes Donovan. "Still on for tomorrow? Got some info you should hear." Brock stared at the message. 3 months ago, he'd asked Wes, now a private investigator, to look into some discrepancies in the company accounts. But Wes's tone suggested he'd found something else entirely. 8 a.m., the usual place. Brock replied. Sleep eluded him that night. Lying beside Aubrey, he cataloged the subtle changes of the past year. The new wardrobe, the increased work events, the guarded phone, and the faint scent of cologne that wasn't his. Their anniversary was 3 weeks away. 8 years. Brock had been planning something special, hoping to recapture what they'd lost. But first, he needed the truth. Chapter 2. Suspicions. She's seeing someone. Wes slid a manila folder across the booth at Riley's Diner, their regular breakfast spot, since Wes had left the service 4 years after Brock. Brock didn't open it. Ooh, Tyson Blackwell. The name hit Brock like another sledgehammer. Aubrey's ex? The quarterback? Wes nodded grimly. Former quarterback. Current financial advisor at Harrington Wealth Management. And coincidentally, newly appointed financial consultant to the Porter Family Foundation. Stanford hired him. Brock's coffee grew cold as the pieces aligned. How long? At least 4 months of regular meetings. Hotel receipts, text records. Wes hesitated. And there's something else. Her father knows. Of course he does. Brock finally opened the folder, scanning photos of Aubrey entering an upscale hotel, timestamps revealing 2-hour lunch breaks that extended to 3. In one photo, Stanford Porter was visible in the hotel restaurant, clearly timing his exit to avoid his daughter and her lover. Stanford never thought you were good enough for his princess, Wes said carefully. But I didn't expect him to actively enable this. Brock stared at the evidence without emotion. The betrayal hurt less than he'd expected. Perhaps he'd known longer than he'd admitted to himself. There's more, Wes continued. They've been accessing financial information about Maddox Construction. Loan details, contract bids, client lists. Brock's expression hardened. My company. That's what this is about. Your company is about to land the Westbrook Municipal Building contract. $30 million. Your biggest job ever. Which is why our anniversary dinner reservations were so easy to get, Brock muttered. She's been postponing as they gather information. Wes leaned forward. What are you going to do? Nothing. Brock closed the folder and stood. Yet, over the next 2 weeks, Brock became a careful observer in his own marriage. He noticed how Aubrey's phone always faced down, how she took calls in other rooms, her sudden interest in his work schedule. He planted misinformation about project timelines, watching as it made its way back to his competitors through mysterious channels. Meanwhile, he prepared. He transferred key assets, secured digital records, and instructed his most loyal employees to prepare contingency plans. Lena Rodriguez, his operations manager and right hand for 7 years, was the only one who knew the full scope. They're planning something for after the Westbrook contract announcement, Lena concluded after reviewing the evidence. You should confront her now. Not yet. Brock rotated his wedding band thoughtfully. Our anniversary is next Saturday. Let's see what happens. Throughout these preparations, Brock maintained his routine. He came home at regular hours, discussed work casually with Aubrey, and even attended a dinner at Stanford Porter's mansion where he watched his father-in-law and wife exchange glances they thought he couldn't interpret. 6 days before their anniversary, Brock confirmed his reservation at Larson's, Aubrey's favorite restaurant. He ordered her favorite flowers and bought her a diamond bracelet he knew she'd never wear. The performance was necessary. He needed them to believe their plan was still secret. The night before their anniversary, Brock overheard Aubrey on the phone in her study. Everything's set. Yes, Ty, he doesn't suspect anything. After dinner tomorrow, Dad has the paperwork ready. I know what I'm doing. When she emerged, Brock was reviewing construction plans in the living room, his face revealing nothing. Big day tomorrow, he said with a practiced smile. 8 years. Can't wait, Aubrey replied, her own smile not quite reaching her eyes. Chapter 3. The Anniversary. Brock spent the morning of their anniversary preparing a surprise. He canceled the restaurant reservation and instead transformed their dining room with candles, flowers, and Aubrey's favorite music. He spent hours cooking her favorite meal, seared scallops, roasted rack of lamb, and chocolate soufflé. Recipes he'd secretly practiced for weeks. At 6 p.m., the table was set with their wedding china. The lamb rested perfectly cooked. The wine, a rare vintage from the year they met, was breathing. Brock had sent Aubrey a text that morning, telling her to meet him at home instead of the restaurant for a special surprise. Her reply came at 5:30 p.m., running late. Start without me. Be there by 7:30. Brock knew exactly where she was. Wes had confirmed that Aubrey, Stanford, and Tyson were meeting at Stanford's office downtown. Finalizing their plan, no doubt. At 7:45 p.m., the food sat cold and congealed. The candles had burned halfway down. Brock sat motionless at the head of the table, staring at the empty chair across from him. His phone buzzed at 8:17 p.m. The text wasn't from Aubrey. Check the basement. Brock didn't recognize the number, but he wasn't surprised. He rose calmly, leaving his napkin folded beside his untouched plate. The basement stairs creaked as he descended into the darkness, flipping on lights as he went. Stanford Porter stood beside the water heater, a silver suitcase at his feet. His expensive suit looked out of place among the storage boxes and tools. Where's Aubrey? Brock asked. Not coming. Stanford's thin smile didn't reach his cold blue eyes identical to his daughter's. She's with Tyson, where she belongs. Interesting venue choice for this conversation. Stanford shrugged. Neutral territory. This house will be sold anyway. My house, Brock corrected. For now. Stanford kicked the suitcase toward him. She doesn't want you anymore. She got back with her ex-boyfriend. But I'm here to make a deal. Brock raised an eyebrow, but didn't touch the suitcase. I'm listening. In that case, our papers transferring controlling interest in Maddox Construction to a holding company. Sign them, and you get $3 million cash. Walk away quietly. And if I don't, Stanford's smile widened. The Westbrook contract has already been reassigned. Your company's loan applications will be denied. The building inspection delays on your current projects will continue indefinitely. You've been busy. We've been planning this for over a year. Tyson needs a construction company to complete his portfolio. You need to disappear. And Aubrey, she made her choice. She was never meant for someone like you. Brock nodded slowly. I like to hear that from her. She won't be calling. Stanford checked his watch. They're boarding a flight to the Maldives as we speak. When they return, the divorce papers will be ready. Signed tonight, and this stays civilized. As if on cue, Brock's phone began vibrating continuously. Aubrey's face flashed on the screen, call after call. Stanford frowned. What did you do? Nothing yet. Brock pocketed the still vibrating phone. But I think our plans for tonight might have hit a complication. By midnight, Aubrey had called 63 times. The text grew increasingly desperate. Please answer is not what you think. Where are you? Dad wasn't supposed to do this, please. Brock, I can explain everything. Stanford's phone had also begun ringing incessantly. His smug expression had long since vanished. What did you do? He demanded again, his composure cracking. Brock finally opened the suitcase, examining the documents inside. I think our negotiation has been interrupted. Perhaps we should reschedule when all parties can be present. Stanford grabbed his arm. Sign the papers now, or what? Brock removed Stanford's hand from his arm with careful precision. You'll tell my wife I've been unfaithful? You'll ruin my business? You'll destroy my reputation? He smiled coldly. It seems you played all your cards already, Stanford. Brock's phone continued to vibrate as he ascended the basement stairs, leaving his father-in-law sputtering behind him. The anniversary dinner sat abandoned in the dining room, a fitting metaphor for his marriage. He finally answered on Aubrey's 64th call. Brock, thank God. Where are you? Are you okay? I'm home, he replied calmly, enjoying our anniversary dinner alone. Your father just offered me $3 million to disappear. The silence on the other end confirmed everything. Brock, please. Come home, Aubrey. It's time we had an honest conversation. He ended the call and turned off his phone. Whatever game they had been playing, the rules had just changed. Now, it was his turn to make a move. Chapter 4. The Deal. Aubrey arrived at 2:37 a.m., mascara streaking her flushed face. She found Brock in his home office, calmly reviewing documents. You weren't supposed to find out this way, she blurted. No. Brock glanced up. Was I supposed to find Tyson in our bed? Or maybe after I signed away my company? It's complicated. She collapsed into the chair opposite him. Ty and I reconnected at a fundraiser. It just happened. Like the financial espionage just happened. Like sabotaging my projects just happened. Her eyes widened. I never. Save it. Brock pushed a folder across the desk. Flight confirmations to the Maldives. Hotel reservations. Bank transfers from your father to Tyson. It's all here, Aubrey. How did you? I've known for months. Brock's voice remained steady. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? I built a construction empire from nothing. I noticed when nails are a quarter-inch off. Tears spilled down Aubrey's cheeks. I still care about you. No, you're scared. Brock leaned forward. Your father promised Tyson my company, but something went wrong tonight. What was it? Aubrey's shoulders slumped. The Westbrook contract. Dad said he'd redirected it to Harrison Construction, but the commissioner called Ty tonight. The contract is still yours. They can't legally reassign it. So the leverage vanished. Brock nodded, and suddenly the Maldives trip lost its appeal. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. Brock closed the folder. Now you're here to salvage what you can. What do you want, Brock? Aubrey whispered. I want my own deal. Brock slid another document toward her. Divorce papers. My terms. Aubrey scanned the document, her face paling. This gives me nothing. It gives you freedom from this sham marriage. The prenup stands. My company remains mine. You keep your trust fund and personal accounts. My father won't accept this. Your father isn't my concern anymore. Brock stood. Sign it, Aubrey, or I'll ensure the DA receives evidence of corporate espionage and contract tampering involving the Porter family. You're bluffing. Try me. Brock's eyes were as cold as the dinner that still sat in their dining room. Your father came to my home on my anniversary to destroy everything I've built. Did you really think I'd just roll over? After Aubrey left with the unsigned papers, Brock called Wes. She'll be heading to Stanford's, he said. I need everything they say recorded. Already on it, Wes confirmed. What about Tyson? Let him sweat tonight. Tomorrow, we implement Phase 2. Phase 2 began at 9 a.m. when Brock met with District Attorney Paula Winston, an old client whose kitchen renovation he completed at cost when the contractor abandoned the job. This stays unofficial for now, Brock explained, presenting select evidence of the Porter's activities. I'm handling it privately, but I need protection if things escalate. By noon, Brock sat across from Stanford Porter in the older man's opulent office. You've made your point, Stanford began. Let's discuss a reasonable settlement. I already gave Aubrey my terms. Brock examined the art on Stanford's walls with deliberate indifference. Non-negotiable. $5 million, Stanford countered. You keep your company, sign the divorce papers, and walk away. Brock turned his attention to his father-in-law. You still don't understand. This isn't about money. Everything is about money. No, Stanford, this is about respect. Brock leaned forward. You targeted my company, manipulated my wife, and tried to erase 8 years of my life because you never thought I deserved your daughter. You didn't, Stanford snapped. You were a contractor with dirt under his fingernails. She was a porter, and now she's damaged goods returning to a has-been quarterback with gambling debts. Brock smiled coldly at Stanford's surprise. Yes, I know about Tyson's arrangement with those bookies in Atlantic City. The ones you've been paying off. Stanford's face hardened. What do you want? I want you to convince Aubrey to sign my divorce terms. I want Tyson to disappear from my life permanently. And I want your written guarantee that you'll never interfere with my business again. And if I refuse? Brock stood. Then I stop being so generous with what I know. As Brock left the Porter building, he called Lena. It's done, he said. Prepare the Westbrook documents for signature tomorrow. And the special provisions? Lena asked. Leave them in, Brock confirmed. The Porters just folded. But Brock knew better than to trust Stanford Porter's surrender. That evening, he received a call from Maeve Porter, Aubrey's younger sister. They're still plotting against you, she warned. Dad's calling in favors with the zoning board. Why are you telling me this? Brock asked. Maeve had always been cordial, but distant. Because I'm tired of watching my father and sister destroy good people. She paused. And because I never told them about the Porter Foundation irregularities you helped me cover up 3 years ago. Brock remembered the accounting discrepancies Maeve had discovered, and how he'd helped restructure the reports to prevent a scandal. We'll call even then, he said, but I need details of what they're planning. By morning, Brock's divorce terms had been signed, and Stanford had provided written guarantees about Maddox construction. But Brock knew the war was far from over. Stanford Porter never surrendered. He only retreated to regroup. Chapter 5, Gathering Intel. The Westbrook Municipal Building contract signing should have been Brock's crowning achievement. Instead, it marked the beginning of a more complex strategy. Congratulations, Commissioner Daniels said as flashbulbs popped. Maddox Construction beat out some serious competition. Quality always wins, Brock replied, knowing the Porter-controlled Harrison Construction had submitted a suspiciously lower bid at the last minute. As predicted, problems began immediately. Building permits were mysteriously delayed. Material deliveries were rerouted. Subcontractors received better offers from competing projects. Stanford's fingerprints are all over this, Wes confirmed after investigating. He's determined to make you fail spectacularly on this high-profile job. Let him think it's working, Brock instructed. Meanwhile, I need everything on Tyson Blackwell. Not just the gambling, everything. What emerged was a portrait of a man whose golden boy facade masked increasing desperation. Tyson's financial advisory business catered to wealthy clients through his connection to the Porters, but his personal finances were in shambles. He owed over $800,000 to various bookies and had been embezzling from client accounts to cover his debts. Stanford has been covering for him, Wes explained, showing bank transfers. But even he doesn't know the full extent. In Aubrey, she believes Tyson's the same star quarterback she dated in college. Stanford's kept her insulated from the ugly details. Brock considered this information carefully. She's still his weakness, then. And his meal ticket, Wes added. Without her connection to Stanford, he's finished. Brock's strategy adjusted accordingly. Instead of attacking Stanford directly, he would target the relationship between Tyson and Aubrey. Create enough pressure, and one would betray the other. The pressure began subtly. Anonymous tips led to increased scrutiny of Tyson's client accounts. Several bookies received information about Tyson's other gambling debts, creating conflict among his creditors. Meanwhile, Brock ensured that photos of Tyson meeting with various women reached Aubrey through concerned friends. Within weeks, the strain began to show. Tyson and Aubrey's public appearances grew tense. Stanford was spotted having heated arguments with his future son-in-law. The Porter family's carefully cultivated image of perfection was developing cracks. Maeve continued providing inside information, reporting that Aubrey had begun questioning her relationship with Tyson after discovering text messages from someone named Raven. She still believes you're the villain in this story, Maeve warned during a clandestine meeting at a coffee shop across town. Dad has convinced her you're sabotaging Tyson out of spite. Let her believe that for now, Brock replied. The truth will be more effective when she has no one else to turn to. Meanwhile, Brock implemented a parallel strategy for his business. While appearing to struggle with the Westbrook project, he secretly fast-tracked other jobs, building goodwill with clients and officials who weren't under Stanford's influence. He restructured Maddox Construction's operations, creating subsidiaries that could continue if the main company was attacked. The most crucial intelligence came from an unexpected source. Carmela Rivera, Stanford's longtime housekeeper, whose son worked as a laborer for Maddox Construction. After Brock had personally paid for the boy's emergency surgery 3 years earlier, something Stanford had refused to help with, she became an invaluable ally. Mr. Porter keeps a separate phone, she revealed during a meeting arranged by her son. He only uses it for calls about you and the Westbrook project. This information led to Wes placing surveillance on Stanford's secondary communications, revealing a network of officials and businesspeople conspiring to sabotage Maddox Construction. Each became a thread that Brock could pull when the time was right. 4 months after the anniversary dinner, Brock had compiled comprehensive files on everyone involved in the conspiracy against him. He knew their weaknesses, their secrets, and, most importantly, their pressure points. You have enough to destroy them all, Lena observed as they reviewed the evidence in Brock's secure office. Why wait? Because destruction isn't enough, Brock replied, studying photographs of Stanford, Aubrey, and Tyson at a recent charity gala. I want them to destroy each other first. Chapter 6. Setting the Trap. The Westbrook Municipal Building rose steadily despite the obstacles, its steel framework reaching skyward like a monument to Brock's persistence. The project was 3 weeks behind schedule and over budget, but still viable, exactly as Brock had planned. They're getting confident, Wes reported after monitoring Stanford's communications. They think you're on the verge of collapse. Perfect. Brock surveyed the construction site. Time to spring the trap. The trap had multiple components, each designed to create maximum pressure at precisely the right moment. The first component targeted Tyson's gambling debts. Brock arranged for several of Tyson's creditors to demand payment simultaneously, creating a cash crisis that Stanford would have to address. At the same time, anonymous tips to the Securities Exchange Commission highlighted irregularities in accounts Tyson managed. He'll be desperate for cash, Brock explained to his inner circle, and Stanford will be reluctant to bail him out again with regulators circling. The second component involved the Porter Foundation. Using information from Maeve and documentation he'd helped conceal years earlier, Brock carefully exposed certain discrepancies to the Foundation's board members. Nothing illegal, but concerning enough to prompt an internal audit. Stanford will be distracted defending his legitimate business, Brock continued. His focus will shift away from me and toward protecting his reputation. The third and most crucial component involved Aubrey. Through careful manipulation of text messages and strategic leaks of information, Brock created the impression that Tyson was preparing to abandon her once he secured enough of Stanford's money. She's the linchpin, Brock told Wes. If she turns on either of them, the alliance collapses. The trap was baited with one final element. Rumors that Maddox Construction was on the verge of bankruptcy and that Brock was seeking a buyer. This would draw Stanford and Tyson into making their final move, attempting to acquire the company at a distressed price. When they reached for that bait, Brock said the trap closes. The execution required precise timing. On a Monday, the SEC began an informal inquiry into Tyson's investment practices. By Wednesday, 3 bookies had representatives waiting outside his office. Thursday brought news of the Porter Foundation audit. By Friday, Aubrey had discovered apparently deleted messages on Tyson's phone discussing a post-Aubrey strategy. The following Monday, Stanford Porter requested an urgent meeting with Brock. "I'll admit, you've shown more resilience than I expected," Stanford began, looking haggard from a week of containing multiple crises. "High praise," Brock replied dryly. "Let's end this war," Stanford continued. "I'm prepared to offer $15 million for Maddox Construction. Full value, despite your current difficulties." "Interesting timing," Brock observed, just as the Westbrook project reaches its most capital-intensive phase. "A coincidence? This is a gesture of reconciliation. Does Tyson know you're here?" Stanford's expression flickered. "This is strictly between us. And Aubrey. She's reevaluating her relationship choices." Brock nodded slowly. "I'll consider your offer, Stanford, but I'll need the terms in writing." As Stanford left, Brock called Lena. "The fish took the bait," he said. "Prepare the final documentation." That evening, Brock received a separate call from Tyson Blackwell himself. "We should talk man-to-man," Tyson suggested, his former athlete's confidence strained. "I know you're in a difficult position with the Westbrook project. I might be able to help." "How generous," Brock replied. "The Porter Club, at 8 tomorrow." The Porter Club was Stanford's domain, an exclusive establishment where Boston's elite conducted their most private business. By suggesting it, Brock ensured Stanford would learn of the meeting. The next evening, Brock arrived early, securing a table with a clear view of the entrance. At 8:10, Tyson arrived, looking nervous. At 8:20, Stanford entered, spotting Tyson with Brock and freezing momentarily before approaching. "What's this about?" Stanford demanded, looking between them. "Just 2 businessmen talking," Tyson replied smoothly. "About mutual opportunities." Stanford's eyes narrowed. "What opportunities?" "Tyson was about to offer me $20 million for my failing company," Brock supplied helpfully. "Which is interesting, given your $15 million offer yesterday." Stanford turned to Tyson. "What the hell are you doing?" "The same thing you're doing," Tyson shot back. "Trying to salvage something from this mess." Their argument escalated, drawing attention from nearby tables. Brock sat back, watching as months of carefully planted suspicions blossomed into open hostility. "You promised me Maddox Construction," Tyson hissed. "Then you try to cut me out. Because you've become a liability," Stanford retorted. "The SEC investigation, the gambling debts you hid from me, which you promised to handle." Brock cleared his throat. "Gentlemen, perhaps we should continue this elsewhere." But the damage was done. The fissures between Stanford and Tyson had become chasms. As they left separately, Brock made a call. "Maeve, tell Aubrey to check her email in 15 minutes." The email contained recordings of both Stanford and Tyson discussing their plans to acquire Brock's company and discard Aubrey once her usefulness ended. Brock had edited nothing. Their own words were damning enough. The final phase was set in motion. By morning, all the players would be positioned exactly where Brock needed them for his endgame. Chapter 7. First Strike. The Porter family's annual charity gala provided the perfect backdrop for Brock's first strike. As Boston's elite gathered at the Harrington Hotel ballroom, Brock arrived unexpectedly, his first public appearance since the separation from Aubrey. Conversations stuttered as he entered, impeccably dressed in a tailored tuxedo. He nodded politely to acquaintances, ignoring the whispers that followed him. Stanford, holding court near the bar, visibly stiffened. Aubrey, standing with Tyson across the room, paled. Neither had expected him to attend an event so firmly on Porter territory. Mr. Maddox greeted Benjamin Harrington, the elderly patriarch of Boston's banking dynasty. "Good to see you. I've been admiring your work on the Westbrook project." "Thank you," Brock replied, raising his voice just enough to carry. "Despite some unusual challenges, we're back on schedule." "Challenges?" "Permit delays, supply issues. Nothing we couldn't overcome with the right documentation." The emphasis on documentation caused Stanford to set down his scotch. Across the room, Tyson whispered urgently to Aubrey, who shook her head and moved away from him. Brock circulated through the room, dropping carefully crafted comments to strategic individuals. To the bank president, "Those SEC inquiries into certain financial advisors are concerning, aren't they?" To the zoning commissioner, "Fascinating how building permits can be delayed without documentation, don't you think?" To a board member of the Porter Foundation, "I hear the audit is proceeding well." Each comment was innocent in isolation, but devastating in context. By the time Brock approached the bar where Stanford now stood alone, the older man was seething. "What are you doing?" Stanford demanded quietly. "Enjoying the party," Brock replied. "Your annual contribution to society's conscience. This isn't over between us." "Actually, it is." Brock sipped his whiskey. "Check your phone." Stanford's phone showed an email from the SEC confirming a formal investigation into his involvement with Tyson's client accounts. Attached were documents bearing Stanford's signature authorizing questionable transactions. "This is fabricated," Stanford hissed. "No, it's the paperwork you signed last month without reading carefully." Brock smiled. "The same paperwork that cleared me of any involvement." Across the room, Tyson was having a similar moment of panic as his phone displayed notifications of frozen accounts and scheduled interviews with federal investigators. The masterstroke came when Aubrey, now standing alone near a column, received her own message. Video footage from the Porter Club showing Stanford and Tyson arguing over who would control Maddox Construction after forcing Brock out. The ballroom's atmosphere transformed as key attendees received similar messages, each containing damaging information about Stanford or Tyson. Bank officers learned of unauthorized transfers. City officials discovered evidence of their own complicity in permit delays. Foundation board members received documentation of financial irregularities. By the time Brock departed an hour later, the damage was irreversible. Stanford was surrounded by concerned board members. Tyson was nowhere to be seen, having fled after a confrontation with his largest client. And Aubrey stood abandoned near the entrance, watching Brock leave with tears streaming down her face. The next morning, the Boston Daily reported that Stanford Porter had taken a leave of absence from the Porter Foundation pending an internal review. Tyson Blackwell's office at Harrington Wealth Management was mentioned as being temporarily closed. The article noted that several development projects associated with Porter Investments were under review by city officials. Brock read the news with satisfaction while touring the Westbrook site, where work was proceeding at an accelerated pace now that the mysterious obstacles had vanished. "Stanford's lawyers have been calling nonstop," Lena reported. "Let them call," Brock replied. "The terms haven't changed." Those terms, drafted months ago and waiting for this moment, required Stanford to divest from any business that competed with Maddox Construction, publicly renounce any claims against Brock, and resign from several influential boards that controlled city contracts. By evening, Stanford had capitulated to the first demand, selling his shares in Harrison Construction at a significant loss. The other terms would follow as pressure mounted. Tyson proved more difficult. Accosted by creditors and abandoned by Porter Protection, he made a desperate move, approaching Brock directly at his home. "I can help you destroy Stanford completely," he offered, standing on Brock's doorstep, looking disheveled. I have information. I already have everything I need. Brock cut him off. And nothing you need. He set me up. He used me to get to you, then planned to discard me. Just like you and Aubrey planned to do to me. Brock's voice remained calm. The difference is, I saw it coming. As Tyson's desperation increased, so did his threats. I'll go public with everything. Your methods, how you manipulated evidence. With what proof? Brock asked. Your credibility is gone, Tyson. Your accounts are frozen. Your clients have abandoned you. Even Aubrey has realized what you are. I'll destroy you. Tyson lunged forward, but Brock was prepared. The security cameras captured everything. Tyson's attack, Brock's measured self-defense, and Tyson's subsequent arrest for assault by the police officers who arrived with suspicious promptness. With Tyson in custody and facing multiple charges, the second pillar of the conspiracy crumbled. Only Aubrey remained. Chapter 8. Desperate Measures. Aubrey arrived at Brock's office unannounced 3 days after the gala. Lena intercepted her in the reception area. Mr. Maddox is unavailable, she stated firmly. Please, Aubrey's composed facade cracked. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Brock, watching via security monitor, nodded to Lena. Send her in. Aubrey had lost weight, her designer clothes hanging loosely on her frame. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her hands trembled slightly as she took the seat across from Brock's desk. Thank you for seeing me, she began. I didn't know where else to go. Brock remained silent, waiting. Everything's falling apart, she continued. Dad's under investigation. The Foundation's accounts are frozen. Tyson's been arrested. She looked up. You did all of this. I simply returned what was offered to me. Brock replied evenly. I made a terrible mistake, Aubrey whispered. I should never have betrayed you. Which betrayal are you apologizing for? The affair? The corporate espionage? Or the plan to strip me of everything I've built? All of it. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I was confused. Tyson made me believe you'd been using me to access Dad's connections. Dad convinced me you were just waiting to divorce me once you secured the Westbrook contract. And you believed them without ever asking me. I know that now. She reached for his hand across the desk, but he withdrew it. Brock, please. We can start over. I still love you. No, Aubrey, you don't. Brock's voice remained steady. You love security. You love status. Right now, I represent your best option for both. That's not true, isn't it? Your father's reputation is in tatters. Tyson is facing prison. Your family's assets are under scrutiny. You're alone for the first time in your life. Brock leaned forward, and suddenly, you remember your love for me. Aubrey's expression hardened slightly. What do you want from me? Begging? Public humiliation? Tell me what it will take to end this. Nothing you can offer. Brock stood. Our divorce is final. Your father is meeting my terms. Tyson is facing consequences. Justice has been served. So all of this was just revenge? Aubrey's voice rose. You've destroyed my family for payback. No, Aubrey. I protected what's mine from people who try to take it. There's a difference. As security escorted her out, Aubrey made one final, desperate appeal. I'll tell everyone how you set us up, how you manipulated evidence and bribed officials. Brock simply nodded to Lena, who handed Aubrey a final envelope. Inside was documentation of Aubrey's own involvement, emails, recorded conversations, bank transfers she'd authorized to fund the conspiracy against Brock. Your choice, Brock said, but consider carefully who has more to lose. That evening, Stanford made his countermove. News outlets received anonymous information about alleged defects in the Westbrook project, fabricated safety concerns designed to trigger inspections and delays. Brock had anticipated this. Within hours, his team provided comprehensive documentation proving the allegations false, along with evidence tracing the false claims to Stanford's remaining allies. The media narrative quickly shifted from potential scandal to apparent smear campaign. The next morning, Stanford arrived unannounced at the Westbrook construction site, demanding to see Brock. Security brought him to Brock's temporary office overlooking the rising structure. You've won, Stanford conceded, looking every day of his 68 years. Name your final price. I already have. Brock gestured to the contracts on his desk, the same terms Stanford had been resisting. You'll destroy me completely. No, Stanford. I'll leave you enough to live comfortably in retirement. Away from Boston. Away from any business interests that might cross mine. And Aubrey. She made her choices. Now she lives with them. Stanford signed the documents without further protest. As he stood to leave, he asked one final question. How did you do it? We had everything planned perfectly. You planned to take what someone else built, Brock replied. I've spent my life building things to last. That's the difference between us. After Stanford left, Wes arrived with final confirmation. All the players had capitulated. Tyson had accepted a plea deal that would send him to prison for 5 years. Stanford had booked a one-way flight to his property in the Cayman Islands. The Porter Foundation board had restructured without any family members in leadership positions. It's over, Wes said. They're finished. Not quite, Brock replied. There's one loose end. Chapter 9, Reckoning. The Westbrook Municipal Building opened on schedule, its gleaming glass and steel facade dominating the city skyline. The ribbon-cutting ceremony drew Boston's elite, conspicuously missing the Porter family for the first time in generations. Brock stood at the center, shaking hands with the mayor as cameras flashed. His company had not only survived but thrived, securing 3 additional major contracts in the aftermath of the Porter conspiracy's collapse. You've become the city's premier builder, Commissioner Daniels remarked during the reception. Amazing how quickly things change. Some things change, Brock agreed. Others stay exactly as they should. As the celebration continued, Brock received word that Aubrey was waiting outside. Despite everything, she had maintained a dignified public silence, neither defending her father and Tyson nor attacking Brock. This restraint had preserved what remained of her social standing. Brock found her standing beside the commemorative plaque bearing his name. Congratulations, she offered. It's magnificent. Thank you. Brock studied her. The months had been hard, but she'd regained her composure. She was still beautiful, still a Porter, even if that name carried less weight now. I'm leaving Boston, she said. Fresh start in Chicago. Brock nodded. Wise choice. Before I go, she hesitated. I never asked why you answered my call that night. After 63 attempts, you could have let me panic all night. I wanted you to know it was me. Brock replied simply. Not circumstance. Not bad luck. Me. Was any of it real? Her voice caught. It was. Brock's expression softened momentarily. Until it wasn't. She nodded, blinking back tears. Can you ever forgive me? No. The word was gentle but absolute. Some betrayals can't be forgiven, Aubrey. Only survived. As she turned to leave, Brock added, but I wish you well in Chicago. Sincerely. Her sad smile acknowledged the closure in his words. They both knew this was the last time they would speak. Later that evening, Brock stood alone on the rooftop terrace of the Westbrook building, surveying the city that had nearly been taken from him. His phone buzzed with a message from Maeve Porter. Dad left the country today. The lawyers finalized everything. It's truly over. Thank you for keeping your word about my involvement. Brock typed back. Your trust fund is secure. Good luck with medical school. Another message arrived, this one from Lena. Harrison Construction acquisition completed. We now own all their assets and contracts. The final piece. Stanford's former company, once positioned to replace Maddox Construction, was now a subsidiary of it. The circle was complete. 6 months later, Brock stood in his new office in the Maddox Tower, formerly the Porter Building, purchased at a substantial discount during the Foundation's reorganization. The city spread out below him, including the Westbrook building gleaming in the distance. West joined him at the window. Tyson's parole was denied. Stanford's permanent residency in the Caymans was approved. Aubrey's engaged to some tech entrepreneur in Chicago. And we just secured the airport expansion contract, Brock added. The largest in the city's history. Not bad for a guy with dirt under his fingernails, West quipped. Brock smiled. I still get my hands dirty. It's how I know the foundation is solid. That evening, as Brock drove home to his new house overlooking the harbor, he passed the old neighborhood where his anniversary dinner had sat cold on the table 18 months earlier. The house had sold quickly after the divorce, purchased by a young family who would never know the betrayal its walls had witnessed. His phone rang through the car speaker. "Mr. Maddox? This is Caroline from the mayor's office. The committee unanimously approved your urban renewal proposal. The Porter District will be renamed Westbrook Commons. The final vestige of the Porter family's civic legacy erased." "Thank you, Caroline. That's excellent news." As he ended the call, Brock felt no particular satisfaction or triumph, only the calm certainty that comes with completion. His company was secure. His enemies were neutralized. His future was entirely his own. The cold dinner that night had been the end of one chapter. Tonight, Brock Maddox would dine alone again, not as a victim of betrayal, but as the architect of his own vindication. Some called it revenge. He called it justice. The distinction mattered only to those who understood the difference between destroying something and building something that would last. His heart, like his resolve, remained cold toward those who had betrayed him, but his vision for the future burned brighter than. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen, and I'll see you there.